has been passed away for many time. And in his last moments on the cross, he looks down at who's around him. He sees the disciple. Well, guess what? The disciple's name is John. John was so humble that he doesn't use his own name as he's writing his book. But he's talking to John the disciple, probably his best friend, someone he was very close to. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved, which was John, standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman," now I don't think he used a bad tone here. "Woman," nothing like that, in a very loving way. "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, who was John, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Now this is a huge moment in the life of Jesus. This is a huge moment as he teaches us and as we learn how to love like Jesus did. He knew his time was going away. Now he knew he'd rise again, but he would descend into heaven, right? And still be gone. So he knew he wasn't going to be on this earth much longer after that. And so he looked down and he still cared for his mother. He still showed love even in his last breaths. We're going to look at three or four things that we have to do to learn how to love Jesus. And the first one is this. I'm going to break it down a little bit. But the first way we can learn to love like Jesus did is we must make this commitment to say, I must care for my own family. When it comes to my family, when it comes to my loved ones, that I need to focus on, and we're going to look at different things we need to do to show that love. Even in his dying moments, he looked down and focused on his mother. And that's the number one way we can show care for our family, is by paying attention to them. By giving them our undivided time, our undivided attention. I heard a sermon about this concept, and it kind of hit me. I was like, wow, that's so true. But if you think about it, I heard this pastor talking, and he said, you know, if you don't give attention and love, but you try to do other things for your family, like you can always come up with more money. And I thought, how? You know, teach me your ways, O wise man. You know? But if you think about it, you can always try to come up with more money. You can always come up with more things and more stuff. What's the number one thing you can never go back and get more of? And that is your attention, your time. You can't go back and create a 26th hour, 25th hour in the day. You only have the same amount every day of your life. And so that makes that the most precious gift you can give, the most precious thing you can do. I'll never forget a young man going through a really, really hard time many years ago. And he lived in a different state, and he called me, and we talked for a long, long time. And at the end of the conversation, he said, Nate, I know how precious time is. I know how crazy your life is. Thank you for your time. And the way he said it just impacted me. I thought, wow, that's so true. Our time is so important. Give your family your attention. Give your family your time. Let them know, hey, I'm here for you. I care about you. So that's one huge way that we can care for our own family. Another thing about that is when we give them our attention, that leads to respect. I'm just going to be honest. I've never heard of a parent or whoever that tried to buy their kids love or whatever. I've never heard their kids say, man, I respect so-and-so so much. But when you give them your attention, when you give them your time, that creates a bond, that creates a respect for each other, and something there that is irreplaceable and is so important. So attention leads to respect. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12 makes it very clear and simple. Honor your what? Father and mother. Honor your father and mother. Now it's interesting. There's no time limit to this. There's no exceptions to this. You should honor your father and mother. And this part is really hard, and especially in our youth ministry on Wednesday nights and in the ministries that I do across the Carolinas. As you all know, there's a lot of broken homes. There's a lot of students and children and families who don't have parents either around because of their bad choices or because they passed or whatever it might be. And here's the thing. This is still telling you to honor them. Even if they are not around, even if they have made bad choices or chose, I still teach students all the time, you still got to honor them by having a spirit about you that loves them and cares for them, even if they haven't quote-unquote earned it. Even if they're not around, it's inside of you. It's who you are. It's a part of you. Don't let that bitterness and anger and things take over, and so you don't honor them even after they pass or even when they're not around. Another way to care for your family is by meeting their practical needs. You know, we are called to love and care for our family by doing this. Now, the interesting thing about this, as Jesus did it, if you look at Jesus' time on earth, we're focusing on those verses of him being on the cross, and he looks down to his mother, he gives her his attention, right? He honors her, he wants to make sure she's cared for and taken care of even when he's gone. And if you think about this, he even meets her practical needs in this sense. In his 33 years on earth, he had not gained a lot of wealth. He didn't have a lot of money or inheritance or investments. He didn't have a home. He couldn't even say, Mother, you can take my house, live there, or whatever. He had the clothes on his back that had been bloodied and beaten, and that was about it. But he did have a resource to continue to care for his mother, and that was John. And he looked down at John, and in order to meet her practical needs, he says, hey, look at her now as your mother. Mother, look at him as your son. John, take her into your home. Take her in your wings. She's a poor widow that you are to care for. And I'm asking you to do this. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. We're going to fly through a lot of scriptures, kind of get through a bunch of them to back this up. But 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 3 and 4 say this. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn, first of all, to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. 1 Timothy 5, we skip to verse 8. Anyone, so it's like, okay, we should do this. It sounds like it's kind of important. Check this out. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Whew, that's tough. So that's saying, man, if you have gotten too busy, if you've gotten too crazy, if your attention and love and taking care of your own household has fallen to the back burner, God says, man, that's just as bad as not having me in your life. You need to focus and take care of your family. And here's the thing. To love like Jesus, we're learning how to love like Jesus did. We're learning how to love people like Jesus loves us. To love like Jesus, we must care for those even when they can't care for us. Even if, and this sounds really bad, but this is how we listen to, even if there's nothing you can do for me, but hey, I'm going to do everything I can for you. This part of the sermon was a lot easier to get through in the first service because my man Delbert wasn't sitting right there. But let me tell you, I will never forget, Delbert Tangent has been a part of this church a long, long time. When I first moved here about 7 years ago, me and him connected, and he kind of took me under his wing. We spent a lot of time together. And his wife, who has since deceased, was still at home under his care. And I will never forget, baby, being in his living room, seeing his wife on the couch, unable to do much for herself, and seeing him just like breathing, just taking care of her, meeting her needs, helping her out. And I could mention countless names in this service, in this church, that do the same thing for the elderly and same things for those that are unhealthy. We have such a loving and caring church. It's incredible to hear these stories and see this happening. And this is what Jesus did. That was Jesus in skin. That was caring for those who can't care for you. And he was there for her till her last breath. And I want you to know that made an impact on me. And as I was studying this and reading about this, I thought that was what Jesus is talking about. Care for your household. Be there for those around you. Love the people as you can. And there's many ways to do that. And God will provide the ways for doing that. And so we want to make sure we're doing that. So to love like Jesus, we need to care for our own family. And we need to do that by meeting practical needs. And the last thing that we want to focus on when it comes to caring and loving your family is we need to give emotional support. We've got to care for our family. We've got to meet their practical needs. And we also have to give emotional support. This is another part of unpacking these 3 verses that exploded to me on the page. And as I studied it more, I thought, think back on Mary, who's Jesus' mother. Think back on her life. Think of the emotional pain. You think of Mary as like everybody go, better than I'm doing right now. Think back of Mary, and we think of her in these pictures and things, but think about what she would have gone through as the mother of Jesus. From day one, her being pregnant with Jesus, she had to tell her fiance, I've never been with another man. We've never been together. We've never had sex, but yet I'm still pregnant. And imagine the emotional pain that would have brought. Imagine, now this would have never happened in Golden Springs, but imagine there in her town, in her area, people that would have seen that and they would have talked about it. And they would have gossiped about it. They would have glared at her thinking, oh, she says it ain't Joseph's and it ain't nobody else's. Well, then who's it? Imagine what she would have gone through, the emotional ups and downs and roller coaster of this. Now, so all the mothers in the house, Is Mother's Day next week?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to honor y'all next week. Here's the thing. This is hard to think about. This is hard to do. But imagine this. Imagine, so you've gone through that. Now you have this baby, you have this child, and then a prophet comes to you and says, by the way, your son is here to die, and your son is going to be ridiculed and beaten, and he's going to be made fun. He's going to go through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and he's actually just here to serve everyone else, and he's going to suffer mightily during his time on earth. What would that do to a mother? Can you imagine that? As a mother, the emotions you go through that, the pain you feel, you want what's best. You don't want your baby, your child, your son, your daughter to go through these things. Here's the thing I thought about. My son, 2 years old, Hayden, man. He runs around crazy, looks for the little boy with big ears and running everywhere. And what he does, Hope and I were on the same page in this. Praise the Lord, because we would have fought if we weren't. But we're on the same page. When he falls as a toddler, his ears kind of bounce him out sometimes. But when they get off, all right, he falls. And you can tell that cry when like the child's really hurt, right? So I'm not that dad that's like gushing blood. Get up, son, you're okay. All right, so I can kind of sense. I'm like, Lord, is he okay? All right, good. So you know when a kid falls and they're kind of hurt, but not totally hurt? Hope and I agreed from day one to say, we're not going to run up. And if you do this, no judgment, it's all good. But for us, we're like, we're not going to run up and baby, you know. We do this thing where we say, Hayden, hey bug, son, Bubba, whatever we call him, get up. I said, you're okay, you're okay. And I taught him this thing in the beginning when it's not really major, to get up and I say, are you a tough boy? Are you a tough boy? And he'll say, tough boy, daddy, tough boy. And then he'll clear up and he's okay. That with a toddler works, but now I want to shift to this gear, right? So in that physical pain, you're trying to teach them, okay, whatever. When a child or a teenager or an adult alike, when we experience emotional pain, I believe God is calling us to love on each other and help each other rather than just say, get up, you're okay. Rather than just say, oh, whatever. I stand before you humbly to tell you I struggled with this for a long, long time. I'm a mind over matter, oh come on, it can't be that bad, or oh whatever. And God is saying, no, if you are hurting, then you are hurting. Who am I to say you shouldn't be hurting about that? I made a vow, working with teens, I worked with students for over 10 years, I love, I have a passion for teenagers and youth, and I made a vow early on. If a teenager at 13, 14 years old is experiencing a crisis, earth-shattering thing, that I look at as a 34-year-old man and say, oh, just wait, that's nothing, right? Sometimes it happens. I made a vow that I will never make them think that that's not that big a deal because, oh, just wait until you got to pay bills. Just wait until, the stress of life really comes. Because in their minds, in that moment, they're hurting. That to them is huge. That to them is a big thing. In this moment, Jesus looks down at Mary, his mother, and realizes what she's gone through emotionally. And he is there to support her. He is there to help her through that. Especially for those of us who have families around us, especially for those of us that have children or teens or that kind of thing, I don't want you to ever look at a kid and say, man, it's not that bad, get over it, because to them it is. And it's the same for us adults as well. Let's love them, let's help them, let's be real, all right? Let's not just baby and coddle them. I'm not saying that at all. If you do, awesome. But if you don't, just know that, man, there's some emotional pain. There's some things that people may be going through, and we need to help them through that, not just tell them to get over it. In order to learn to love like Jesus, I must take care of my family. And we talked about emotionally, practically, and giving them our attention. The next thing we must do in order to learn to love like Jesus is I must treat other believers as my family. Now, this is the part where becoming a Christian takes you to a whole nother level than before you knew Christ, okay? Before you knew Christ, man, it's the focus on, my family, my household, and you run that good. Pretty much everybody understands that. Some, mess that up too, but we all kind of get that. Well, Christ, as only Christ does, he says, yes, focus on your family. They should make an organization like that. Focus on your family, focus on them, it's about them. But then God says, but also focus on others. Also treat the church, treat other believers as your own family. Here's the thing about that. If you only care about your blood family, then you're not loving like Jesus did. This is what hit me looking at these 3 verses, okay? John, the disciple, his best friend, the one he puts his mother in care of, was not blood family. He had other half-brothers, he had other half-sisters, because of Joseph and Mary and everything. they were not saved at that point. They did not come to accept him as Father until after he was resurrected. So in that moment, because of him pouring into another person's life, he had a resource, he had an opportunity to help even in that moment. If all Jesus cared about was his own family, his 33 years on earth, he would not have poured into other people. He would not have had disciples and followers around him. Even on the cross, this is what is crazy to me, even in the agony of the pain and the exhaustion that he would have gone through, what about the robber next to him? He still even reached out to him. That wasn't his blood family. That was a guy that he had just met hanging next to him on a cross, and he still poured into him. He had poured into John so much that he entrusted his mother in John's care because of the time they had spent together. So we must love other believers as our own family. Matthew chapter 12, verse 50 says this, "For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." 1 Timothy 5, 1 and 2 says, "Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity." God is telling us we are a family. That was another cool thing about this Leadership Institute I was a part of, was to teach these students and try to get them to see that, man, we represent so many different churches, we represent 2 different states, but we are one body of Christ called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And we need to be united. We need to love each other and care for each other just as Christ did for us. We're going to finish up on the hardest part, in my opinion, man. Love my family. Okay, I should do that. I got that. Okay, treat the church, treat other believers as my family. Love on them. I got that. And of course, and we've talked about this a lot before, those that don't know Jesus, we need to love them and be there for them as well. But here's the thing. Here's what I think is going to take us, and what a lot of us in this room today, what God wants us to hear. We said in the beginning, we believe if we don't learn to love like Jesus did, then we're missing out on the purpose of life. We're missing out on what God has us to do, to love him and to love each other. And here's what brings this home for me. Here's what's so important. We must learn to see others' pain. In order to love like Jesus, to learn how to love from Jesus, we must learn to see others' pain even when I'm in pain myself. Even when I'm hurting myself. Even when I'm going through a tough time myself. Even when I have questions that are not answered myself, I am still called to love and to focus on others. That is hard to do. Anybody else in the house like me, when you get sick and you turn into a big baby that just kind of wants to be left alone? It's all about some me. I just want to get better. Naturally, when we're in pain, what do we want to do? We want to relieve our pain because it hurts. We want to feel better because we're hurting. When we're going through something that's tough, it's easy. It's really, really, really easy to naturally focus on ourselves when we are hurting ourselves. And we should. We should focus on self and be loved on and be taken care of for sure. But what Christ wants us to do, again, and take it to that next level, is even when we're in pain, to still love and care for others. That's what Jesus did. Think about that. He went through, I believe it's at least 3 or 4, I think it was 4 all-night trials. Like 2 Jewish ones, 2 Roman ones. He had gone through 4 all-night trials, and the beatings and the exhaustion and everything that he had gone through leading up to the cross. I'm pretty sure Jesus would have got a pass hanging on the cross when the robber goes to talk to him. I think it would have been okay for him to say, "Dude, I'm a little busy saving the world, and I'm a little tired. I just need some me time, okay? So skirt." I don't know if Jesus did the skirt, but I naturally feel that way myself sometimes. Like, oh, I'm too tired to I'm hurting. I'm in this pain. Even when he was exhausted, even when he had gone through all that, Jesus still loved and focused on others, even through the agony of being on the cross. Even through the agony of all he had gone through. I could not help but be convicted about that myself. Man, we can get so busy. Hey, I'm trying to earn a paycheck. Hey, I'm trying to provide for my family. Hey, I'm trying to do what Nate preached about and talk about, taking care of my family, meet these needs. I'm busy, 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 busy. And God's saying, yes, but are you loving people while you do that? Are you being the hands and feet of Jesus even when you're gone, or even when you're busy, even when you're tired, even when you're hurting? We are to take our pain. We are to take our experiences. We are to take what we've gone through in life, which is lots of ups and downs and tough times. We are to take that and take that testimony, that story, and help others with it. That is what God has called us to do. Jesus loved others even while he was busy saving the world. And we can find ourselves being busy as well, but are we able to do that? I want to throw something at you right before we close. Just something I read a blog on, I was listening to a sermon on, and I just thought, wow, here's some practical tips, some practical things. You ever been like, okay, this sermon tells me I should do love more, I love people, but how? What can I do? Man, there's some things that I heard this preacher talking about that I just typed up real quick. I thought, man, this was huge. He challenged his church. He said, I know you're busy, but think about this. Maybe there's a single mom in the church that's working like crazy to provide food, that's working like crazy to do this. They get home, maybe they're alone, and they have to get the food ready for the kids and all this stuff. What if you provided a meal for a single mom? What if you took someone maybe that was widowed or didn't have family around, and you offered to say, hey, you know what? Let me help you out in this area. Let me cook you a meal. Let me let you. We let somebody one time that didn't have a washer and dryer just the other day come to our house. She hung out. She works at our daycare. She hung out for like 3 hours doing her laundry. It was so cool. I was like, Miss Michelle's in my house. It's crazy. Not that Michelle, the other Michelle. But this is so like just if God has blessed you with something, use it. And Debbie and Al, if I get talking about how amazing y'all are, I'll start crying. But let me tell you, they have blessed my family and 2 other families just this last week by saying, hey, God has blessed us with some things. We want you to use it, relax, and do that kind of thing. God has given us so much to help with. He has given us so much to reach out with. And band, y'all come on up. It's an emotional moment, so if you play behind me, it'll be even better, right? Here's the thing. Here's what God is saying. God is saying, take what I've given you. Take the blessings, take the hurts, take the pains, take all that you've experienced in this life and use it to help other people. When I was at that Leadership Institute yesterday, and I sat across, we did this practice, I talked about it last year, but in phase 1 of this 3-year process, you sit face to face with each other and you have to tell your story in 3 minutes to the other person across from you. And it's 1 minute about your life before Christ, it's 1 minute about how you came to know Christ, and then it's 1 minute of your life after Christ, what that's been like. And every person then that heard that story has to give a quick 2-3 recap, 2-3 points that stood out to them. And as I'm hearing people tell their story, and as I'm sharing my story, I looked to a teenager who's a junior in high school, and I shared, I said, yeah, after I came to know Christ, I went through the hardest time of my life when my ex-wife decided to do some things that just weren't cool, and we got a divorce. And she didn't know I was divorced because she knows Hope and my kids really well, and she looked at me like, what? I said, it wasn't Hope, it wasn't Hope. and I shared with her my story, and I shared how God helped me through that and healed me through that. And her recap afterwards, she said, and she's so cool, she's a junior in high school, and she says, well, I've never been divorced, but she goes, hearing that you went through that pain and kept your focus on Christ stood out to me. And that gives me some strength, and that gives me an idea that, man, even when I hurt really bad, because of my relationship with Christ, I can get through that. And I started hearing other people's recaps of their stories, and I heard 4, 5, 6 times people say, wow, hearing that you went through that, I went through the same kind of thing. Hearing that you got through that really has strengthened me to know I can get through that. And that's what God is calling us to do as His church. He's calling us to say, take the bumps, take the bruises, take the pain that you've gone through in your life, and don't just be all about you about it. Let me heal you, let me help you, let me love on you, and then you take that love and you show that to others. When I could look at someone in our church's eyes that I was helping and mentoring and talking to and being a friend to, and he was being a friend to me. And when he went through a really, really tough time that my ex-wife did to me, and I could look at him and say, brother, I know the pain you feel right now, man. And I'm so sorry you're hurting. I'm so sorry you're going through this. After my divorce, after my situation, there was countless people from all across the Carolinas and all across the United States that saw my story that would call me or text me and say, Nate, man, I just went through that too, or Nate, I'm going through that now. And to be able to look at them, and if I wanted to hold on to that, if I wanted to just not share my story, they would never know that, man, I felt that same pain. I've been there, brother. I've been there, sister. I know what that feels like. And so God is calling us today to not hold on to these things, and He's calling us to let them go and to be used by Him. But if you still need to heal, maybe you're not ready, and that's okay. Maybe you're saying, Nate, I'm still hurting too much. I'm still too mad at God. I still don't understand enough. I'm not ready to share my story. Let us as a church wrap you in our arms and wrap you in the love of Christ and say, hey, we're here with you every step of the way. And if you get through that and are ready to share your story, feel free. But until then, we just want to love on you and be here for you as a church. We want to be the hands and feet of Jesus, just as Jesus did. We're going to sing a song that it literally says, come to the altar. Maybe you need to come to Jesus right now and just say, God, I'm still hurting. I'm not ready to do what Jesus did on that cross and still love my family. I'm not ready to do what Jesus did and still help other people because of what I'm going through. Bring that to the feet of Jesus. Bring that to Christ and say, Lord, I need you. If you want to pray by yourself, we always invite you to come to your left and my right, and you can come pray by yourself. If you want someone to pray with you, you can come over here to your right and my left here in this song. But allow God to move and respond the way you need to. Maybe that's in your seat, maybe that's outside, whatever you've got to do. But let's love like Jesus did through his love for us. Amen.
Jesus is calling. great week. Thank you.
What's up, dude? Hey, perfect timing. Isn't that cool? Say what's up. That's Justin. Yeah, you've been hanging out with him a lot.
Mr. Ronnie?
How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, pretty good.
And she's like, whoa, so he runs his church.
Hey, buddy, you got some red cheeks, like me.
Yeah, she's running hers too. Oh yeah, all boys. See, I was almost to 3 boys. So I'm used to it. Right. Or close my wife. Is it your first one? Oh my gosh, she's so different. Like, he is wild. But yeah, what's up, man? You coming back to me?
Same bad time, same bad channel.
What you doing in class? Yeah.